Maybe that's the magic sauce. Although we should have most of them.
Well, good morning, everybody. Let's be more cordial. Morning, everybody. Ah, there we go. It sounds like a full room. Perfect. My name is Chad Barth. I'm the Politics and Government Manager for Eventbrite, and it's my honor to moderate today's second CPAC Tech panel. If you guys want to ask questions to the panelists up here, you can either shout them out, throw a shoe, or use Twitter. There's this thing called Twitter. You can hashtag CPAC Tech and ask questions to the panelists up here as well. We're going to, this almost was the case where we had more panelists than audience members here, so I'm thankful for the other 6 people that came in the room, so thank you guys very much for participating. You guys can rotate into the panel here in the next half hour. And we wanted to talk a little bit about technology today and kind of the who's needed, what's needed, and what's next. I think I said it yesterday in a tech panel that there's been a lot of stories written, a lot of blogs written, a lot of comments made about what didn't go right in 2012 or how dire the situation is for the conservative movement and the technology platform, and maybe that's the case in some places and maybe it's not, maybe it's overrated, maybe it's hyped. But we really want to talk about some of the successes that we do have, where we're going, what we need to do to get there, and who do we need to bring along for the ride. So I'm going to start off with an introduction to all the panelists here by, I'll call out your name, you can state where you're from, and what is your favorite topping on a grilled cheese sandwich? All right, so first up, Alan Allen, chairman of Free VRM. He joins us at the panel. If you want to say hello, Chairman Alley.
Alan Alley, and topping on a grilled cheese sandwich, peanut butter.
Oh, okay. Tom Boschwitz.
I'm out of the box. What can I say?
Tom Boschwitz, political director from Bridgetree.
Hi everybody, I'm Tom Boschwitz, and I would say my favorite topping is cheese on a grilled cheese sandwich.
Plain grilled cheese sandwich, okay. Shannon Bird's president of Victory Solutions.
I would have to say, hailing from the great state of Ohio, a Food Channel specialty of Melt the Restaurant, they have meatballs on their grilled cheese sandwich.
Okay, all right. Wayne Dupree, founder of NewsNinja2012.com.
I guess jalapeno peppers?
Jalapeno peppers, all right. We have pinch hitting for Chris Faulkner today. We have Austin James from Gridiron Communications.
I think the obvious answer here is bacon.
Bacon, all right. The Bacon Caucus rises early on Saturday morning. Gabe Joseph, president of ccAdvertising.
Sliced tomatoes.
Sliced tomatoes, okay. Gerrit Lansing, the digital director for the National Republican Congressional Committee. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. The obvious answer is bacon.
Bacon. 2 votes for bacon. Nansen, Malin, state director of Americans for Prosperity.
I'm from Seaview, Washington, and so the obvious answer there is fresh oysters on a half shell.
All right. Paul Van Remortel, political development director for Intermarkets.
It's really not all that exciting, but it's ketchup for me. I have to have ketchup.
Plain ketchup. One to the ketchup caucus. All right. Ravi Singh, president of ElectionMall. Ravi.
You know, my mom, I don't know, she can never make a grilled cheese sandwich, so she puts like Indian masala on everything. So I just grew up with it, so I would say probably Indian masala.
All right. Michael Turk, president of Opinion Mover Strategies.
You know, I would normally go with bacon, but I think I'm going to step out and go with either bacon jelly or possibly arugula.
Nice.
Were those 2 of the words that you had to answer?
Those are on the word bacon list. Scoring at home.
Anton, my good friend Anton from Google.
I'm gonna probably go around Ravi's side way of things, where my family's from the Mediterranean and we eat lamb with everything, so I'm gonna go with lamb.
Okay. And Amanda Whiteman, account executive for Microsoft. Welcome. Classic cheese. All right. Did I miss anybody? Just want to make sure I got all the panelists here. We got everybody. Okay, perfect. So let's start off with we're going to start off with just a standard question to the panel. You guys can answer if you want. We'll give this a 2-minute answer time limit for everybody, or for the entire group. What do you think was the worst political, we're just going to get it out of the way right now. What was the worst political technology use in 2012? Anybody?
We're supposed to stay positive.
Okay, I'll jump in.
We're starting here, then we're going to work towards positive.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
I think we did a really bad job on Facebook. We could have done a lot better. Social media, it was the worst.
Okay.
I'll jump in as well. One of the problems that we had was that we were churning emails very quickly. I mean, and the life of an email and a political email supposedly is about 10 months, but the way we were hitting them and the way we were trying to go after them because of our lack of education on it, I think was we were dropping people off almost as quickly as we were getting them, and so garbage in, garbage out, the basic rule of technology. So we were throwing garbage out to the wrong people, to the wrong place.
I'd add to that a little bit. I think part of our problem with email is, part of what contributes to that churn is the fact that we have not figured out how to write good email copy. We haven't figured out how to develop a narrative in the email that we're sending out, so what we send out is largely uninteresting.
I'll jump on with Facebook. I think we took an interface that a billion people knew how to use and changed it into an interface that about 1,000 people knew how to use.
Interesting.
So I'll jump in. So we would have some campaigns who would come to us and maybe run a digital campaign on Drudge Report, for instance. We would say, well, who do you want to target? And Drudge Report, almost a third of the users are Democrats, and we have voter data. So let's look at. I mean, are you looking at independents, swing voters? And they'd say, well, no, we just want to run a drudge report. And so they'd go do the buy, and we would scratch our heads and say, well, a little more targeting would give you a better ROI. And there were several campaigns that took that approach, and we, like I said, we were sort of baffled by that.
Anybody else want to jump in on the topic? We have 30 seconds.
I will. I'm Chad. I'm going to use this 30 seconds. I'm going to go a little bit different. I think the one thing that we did poorly, and this is going to be probably, it's going to permeate kind of my conversation today, is culture. Is that they had a culture that understood every single piece in its place. There's a great story. I was at South by Southwest. It's a great story of how data capture and technology kind of permeated down to the volunteers. And that's something that we don't even have buy-in from the campaign managers. And so there is a lack of understanding that the culture has to be different for us to understand anything about Facebook or emails or online ads.
And let me add 10 more seconds to that, is that basically it's the behavior. We're still selling, at least to the right from our side, to convince them to still use certain technologies. I mean, and it seems like there's a generation gap, and we have a lot of people preaching it, but very few people practicing it.
And I'll add on from a data perspective that we didn't really study on our side what we were doing as we did it. We studied, we went out once, went out and did it for a long period of time, and then maybe looked again later on. The other side really studied every step of the way, every reaction, everything that happened, and that really was a big advantage that we missed.
Chad, I think we were lazy in what we were doing. The data comment was there. One of the unique things about what Barack Obama's team did is they didn't trust anybody's data. They went out and gathered their own. They went out and they verified it, the old Ronald Reagan thing of trust but verify. They knew that their people were going to turn out regardless, so they didn't spend a lot of time on that. But they went out and they gathered their own data using own methods. We were lazy. Sometimes we just went with this list, or even the voter files. And with the deterioration of our home phones in the voter files, the list matching that we could do to even verify that person was there has been deteriorated significantly. But we still threw money and effort at the home instead of at the person.
I would just add one more piece that sort of builds on a lot of what everyone has said is from just a higher level, really strategic approach to really embrace technology and digital media. It seems in a lot of ways it's still very tactical and very much just checking different boxes as opposed to the higher level strategy of it really being an integrated part of everything campaigns and issue organizations are doing.
I think I'd add to that, and the difficult way to bring this up is that I don't think that we lack new ideas, and I don't think we lack in tactically implementing ideas. I think that we have a cultural problem with innovation. Liken it to Microsoft being stuck on the desktop app and trying to move to the mobile app, and most of their first iterations looked a lot like their desktop, where Apple stepped outside the box and was willing to change all the rules at one time and do what they felt was right. We have a cultural stumbling block on the right, mostly within the political business, that stymies innovation and does not accept innovation. In fact, most of the time, innovation is actually considered, and has been considered, competitive because it's not along the lines of what's in existence in the institution.
Hey, Microsoft's done a better job now. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
We got the fancy dancy tiles now. Yes.
Are we done with this topic? Panelists, any last words on the topic before we move on?
Chad, one other thing. A lot of what happened on our side in the 2012 election was centrally focused. You know, we're a bunch of, I heard Matt Schlapp talk about this in the panel a couple days ago where he said, we're a party that doesn't believe in centralized decision making that goes on. We believe in individual decision making and giving people a chance. And you know, what happened was that all the money that came in went to different organizations. I helped raise a lot of that money as a shiny object of new technologies that were out there. But the decision makers made the decisions of what went on. And if you were in that group, great. If you weren't in that group, you weren't heard. You didn't have an opportunity, whether it was Facebook stuff or database stuff or email stuff or mobile phone stuff or any of it. So, as a final comment on that, if you ever have a vendor, and I'm not complaining about not getting business, don't do business with them. They just need to be more innovative in the way to be able to get it. But again, just as a culture again on that situation, there was very few people making all the decisions about what was done and what was happening. So thanks for agreeing with me, Shannon. I think that's affection on that. Absolutely.
Were you going to say something?
You used I think you used the word dire earlier, or maybe it was one of the emails, where you said what dire condition the Republican Party is in with regard to all of this. And just adding on to everything that was just said, we really work very competitively as a group. You know, everybody's got the shiny new object, so forth. But the situation for Republicans really isn't that dire, because what the other side did they did a very, very good job using data and technology through the 2012 election and really in 2008 in a lot of ways too. But what they embraced are technologies that are being used every day in the commercial world. The work that our company does every day is very much on par with the type of things that you saw the Obama campaign doing. It's run a campaign, see what happens, change your next campaign a little bit to adjust to the changing environment around you. So it's more a matter of not a dire environment, it's more of a working together and embracing what's available.
Okay. So, moving off of this topic, simple question to the panelists. Has the fact that we lost the presidential campaign finally opened our eyes, truly this time, this election cycle, truly opened our eyes now going into 2013, 2014, to know that technology, digital, data, and all of the buzzwords are not just buzzwords and are actually needing to be implemented and practice what we preach?
I would say I took part in the Growth and Opportunity Project with the RNC, and I will say that from the conversations I've had with all the people sort of putting that together, that there is certainly an understanding of what went wrong. There is certainly from what has been shared with me in terms of the work that they're doing, they've identified exactly where the issues are. They've identified sort of a path forward, but as with all of these things, the problem is not identifying that, because there have been people in the polytech movement for 10 years that have been explaining what's going on and what's wrong and where we need to be going, and they haven't been listened to. So the upside is that they're now being listened to, and that is sort of getting a full airing. The challenge is going to be, as with anything, that we've got to make sure the implementation to fix that is done right. And so that remains to be seen. It's good that there's now sort of this public recognition of where we're at and what the problems are. Now the next question is going to be making sure we solve them in the right way.
Does anyone in this entire room think that a perfectly executed technology operation would have changed the outcome of the election?
One person.
Yeah, and
why?
When you win,
hold on.
we everything.
We had one person raise their hand. Why do you think that is?
Well, when you look at the digital outreach they had, they were using machine learning, data line voters. They understood if you bought certain products, you were more likely to be responding to something like Big Bird's going to get attacked by Ravi. People would run to the polls with that knowledge of that. They knew how to find those people. They used machine learning, support vector machines, top to bottom, compared to what Ravi was doing. They're analog players in the digital world. That absolutely changed the election.
A smart pollster I heard 2 days ago said it's not the tech, it's the message. And a political campaign is basically a marketing endeavor. And there simply were not the votes for our brand and our candidate this time around. That's just sort of to frame this whole thing.
I think bringing it back to the question on kind of looking forward, I do think the next 2 to 4 years within the party are going to be very important for the digital space, and there are people listening that possibly weren't listening last time around, and these panelists and the people that we work with are in a unique opportunity to kind of bring some solutions to the party on how to message to people online, take their television message, direct mail, bring that to specific audiences online, and tailor messages for those different people. So I do think it's the next 2 to 4 years people are listening.
Got a question from the audience already. Here we go.
If one can say many years ago that the medium is the message, referring to a leftist demonstration which would not exist if television cameras did not come and record it, And today in the digital age, wouldn't you say that the medium is the message is very appropriate? We got the campaign, it wasn't the way they messaged, it was the message, so they were very appropriate the way they did not use digital media as well as Obama, so that Obama, his medium was his message, and our medium was our message. So it needs to change, and as the speaker said earlier, about centralized government, if you're against it, then practice it, and then you'll see the medium as the message, and you'll win.
I do think that technology could have changed the election. Let me give you a strategic example using Google as an effort. We had mobile phone email addresses in Ohio, and when we found out what Barack Obama's daily budget was for his ads on Google, we sent out a message to all the Republicans that we had, click on all the Obama ads that you can. If each one of you click on 10 ads today, you'll exhaust this budget by 8 o'clock in the morning. So everybody in Ohio that we had would click on that message, and Obama's ads were gone. Because what you do with Google is you set a particular budget and do that.
Who made that decision, locally or higher up?
Pardon me?
Who made that
We worked independently with folks. I had to go to individual investors who were looking for a return on commercial effort. That's just one example on that. Let me give you another example. The average congressional district has 1 million mobile phones in it, okay? Average congressional district has 160,000 landlines, and there was 3.5 million votes cast. If a congressional candidate was able to announce, I have identified every mobile phone and their email address, and I'm going to communicate with them and send commercials directly into that, how would you feel if you were the opponent? What would you do if you didn't have that technology? Those are just examples of how I feel technology could have changed the election, because I come from the Lee Atwater School of Politics. I was director of computer operations at Reagan Bush 84. And his attitude was, you win elections when your opponents react to what you do, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. We've been reacting, folks. So I believe that technological advances, communicating can help, because politics is like church. 50% of the people that don't come would if you invited them. Our problem was we didn't invite enough to come.
I'd like to address that comment as well. I think you make a great point that the medium's the message, and there should be more thinking about the trends of media consumption. You know, how many people in the room have a TV? How many people have a mobile phone or a tablet? And how many of you watch TV with your mobile phone and or tablet next to you? Right, so are we thinking about those screens and that interaction? You know, it's a rare occasion that I'm watching television and actually, you know, watching it live and not fast forwarding through the advertisements. And when that ad comes on, I pick up my phone, I check my inbox, I pick up my tablet, I check the weather. So how do we play with those platforms and that change in media consumption in a way that you're still getting the message across effectively? And I think that's where platforms like interactive TV and Xbox, as an example, really come in. How do you interact with the user where they're interacting with the biggest screen or with the smaller screens, and how do they play together? And those aren't conversations that we're having enough of yet. We're starting to have more of them, but that's just crucial to think about. At the end of the day, it's most important to get the message out there, and how have the mediums changed?
I agree with Amanda, because when you look at the message, you really have to look at how they did the creative, right? How they did the design, how they did the content, and more importantly, how they also did the logic. You know, you started seeing a lot of digital canvassing, like on Facebook and different things. And when you look at, you know, these evolution of the tablet and the mobile advertising and everyone who's playing a play in this, these are tactics that have been really properly executed to either accomplish one specific goal of their messaging. So it's really important to understand that when we look at messaging, we have to look at that CDCL, that creative design, content, and logic, as part of that flow.
I think one of the interesting challenges here is that I'm sort of hearing two camps. Your camp, which is the fact that the Obama team essentially weaponized data, that they basically made that a function of their whole campaign. And then the message point on the other side of that, and I don't think that you can look at those two as two separate things. I think that you've got to look at them as the same thing. And what the Obama team was doing very well is not only taking the data, but they were also taking behavior sciences, behavioral psychology, behavioral sociology, and really analyzing the data through that prism. So the one thing that they're doing now that I don't see anybody doing on the right is asking what I call the why question. It's one thing to know who will respond to a message, it's another thing to know how they'll respond to a message. It's an entirely different question that I don't see anybody asking, which is why do they respond to that message? And so when you talk about would this have won the election for Romney, you have to ask yourself the question, how many votes were cast relative to the voting age population? There are potentially 100, 150 million voters out there that we're not talking to at all because they're not registered. And when you use data, you can identify who within that unregistered population could be your voter, who you could bring to the table, which is what they were doing. And then once you figure out who you can bring to the table, you figure out how you need to bring them to the table by appealing to those behaviors. And then you bring them into the fold. And so I don't think it's that the Republicans lack a base. I don't necessarily buy that. I mean, I think that there are things that we can do with positions and policies that may affect that one way or another. But our bigger challenge is we need to combine the technology and the message to figure out a better message to deliver and who to deliver it to and how to deliver it and why they'll respond to it.
So, if I could chime in, all of these are great ideas and things need to be done, and some need to be more done better. And so my question is, why aren't they already done? And we spent the first 5 minutes talking about we need a culture change. And then we sort of just move on and get to talking about better advertising or things like that. The culture change should be the entire conversation. And so the next pertinent question is, how do you change a culture? And I have none of a ton of experience in changing whole cultures, but to me the first step is you have to change the flow chart and you have to change the structure of the organization so that different things can be prioritized and the various people in the organization can understand what the new priorities are, and then slowly over time the culture changes. And so if we're going to judge what new campaigns or campaign committees like the NRCC that I work for, if we're going to judge how they're doing it and if they're doing it well, the only thing you need to look at is what their flow chart is. Do the people in digital and the people in data and in tech who work for them have any place at the table, yes or no? If the answer is no, they're not going to do it well, period. That's the end of the story. And any campaign and any person who's running who doesn't have that sort of tech, data, digital person prioritized, lo and behold, they're not going to do tech, data, and digital well. And that's sort of a basic, simple fact that you can look at as like an old school business management perspective about how to change culture. So.
Yeah, I think an observation that I have, I resonate with that a lot, is what I'm seeing. I've worked at some very big companies like Boeing and Ford, and when a competitor does something that you didn't expect, management comes down and starts screaming at the engineers, I need some of that tech stuff, or whatever it happens to be. And that's what I'm seeing right now. And in fact, the money fire hose will probably be turned on and just kind of sprayed randomly around at tech stuff. And they're going to say, go to Silicon Valley and get me some 26-year-old people that worked at Google or Microsoft and put them on our teams and then we're okay, right? And that's not going to work. What's going to work is people in this room, people that already get it, being involved not just on the campaigns, but running the campaigns. I think it's got to be a prerequisite that in these campaigns that we're running, that whoever the campaign manager is deeply imbued in a sense of using these tools to better position and reach our voters. And until we do that, until we say, look, if you don't have that kind of experience, you're not going to be running these campaigns, I think we're going to have it's the guys in the mahogany conference room screaming at us to do more tech stuff.
I'd like to say something here. It seems to me, I look here, I live as far away from the Beltway as you can get. There's a clique in the right tech field. It's the in-crowd. They're not doing a good job of collaborating with the grassroots. We have 25-year-olds writing copy for the biggest, largest demographic on Facebook, and that's women over 40. Why is that? Why aren't we reaching out and bringing in those people who have other life experiences, who have awakened to politics, instead of, it's that culture of innovation that everyone's talking about. We have so much to offer, but what we're not doing is we're not allowing those people to think outside the box. But the most important thing is, how do you start collaborating with them? We need to have better tools to start getting that information.
But we have to, the problem is that we still have to beg the campaigns to do the digital side. And
The other problem is some of us actually are the ones funding those campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah, the people are funding, and the reality is that we have to literally beg them to get involved